I mean, get my wife puts it up there and sends you email to point to the lesson so you can review it. And that's always good. All right. So if you want to turn to Revelation chapter 8, verse 1. And when he broke the seventh seal, there was silence in heaven for about half an hour. And that's a particular word in the Greek. I won't dwell on that, but as far as we know, there's never been silence in heaven before. So, if you remember reading Revelation 4 and 5, where we see the scene in heaven, they're continually giving praise to God. I mean, there's no break, right? Uh, they probably need a good union up there because they never get a break. Okay. Anyway, yeah, so there's never been silence up there as far as we know, but now it says silence in heaven. I mean, a lot of people just skip over that. And so, what that seems to indicate, what I believe is what I've been teaching is that the seven sealed scroll is all there is. In other words, that contains the entire judgments. There are no judgments after the seventh seal is opened. Which makes sense because what does the seven sealed scroll represent? It is the deed to the earth. It is the unveiling or opening of the judgments upon the earth. And as I mentioned before, it represents a document, a very high level document that would have been sent from like an emperor to a governor. And as you open all the seven seals, when you have the seventh seal open, then you can read the entire document. There isn't a second scroll. There's nothing else after that. So, in other words, that implies, and it's evident to me, that the other judgments we're about to read are already contained within that. In other words, they're parallel in the time frame. So during the 7 years, the trumpets and the bowls we're going to see are parallel. There are further unveilings and understandings of what's happening there. Of course, I urge you to go and study the ancient. If you want to, you can Google it, AI it. What was represented by the sealed documents in Roman times, and you'll find out what I'm saying is accurate. It says, and I saw the seven angels who stand before God, and the seven trumpets were given to them. Some imply that this is a separate and new judgment. In other words, the seals are over, now the trumpets happen. I don't believe that, like I just said, because the seventh seal represents the end. And the silence in heaven is because Jesus is coming back immediately and taking over the earth. In other words, there's silence because of the import of how important this is, and that is that all of human history will be over. So the silence is switching from one epoch to another. So Jesus is coming back, and that is what I believe, and that's why we have silence in heaven. It's not because trumpets are coming, but we will go ahead and look at that. I do want to point out one thing. This book is not strictly chronological. As I pointed out before, there are parentheticals in here. Chapter 7 is strictly a parenthetical. In other words, they're focusing on two different aspects of the tribulation. So it's strange because if I was writing it in the Western mind, chapter 6, we studied the first six seals. As a Westerner, I would have seal 7 at the end of chapter 6. That was where it belonged, right? After the sixth seal, you'd expect a seventh, but no. There's a whole chapter in between intervening, but it is not in time as such. So it's parenthetical. It's zooming in on certain sub-events. But in the seventh seal, it is over. So that's the whole idea here. So as we read through the trumpets, what we're going to see is that there are parallels here. I believe that the four horsemen of the apocalypse is the cause of what's happening at the very beginning, right after the rapture. Immediately, the four horsemen are in point A. Remember, we have point A, B, and C, beginning, middle, and end of the tribulation, and that the horsemen then go forth. That is what I call World War III, and I can correlate that with the book of Ezekiel to prove that. And then we see that these are the effects. In other words, the horsemen come forth is really one event. In other words, all four happen as once. There are four distinct sub-events, but it's really just one event. It's sort of like we talk about World War II, and we've watched documentaries. And if you watch the documentaries, you'll see there are many campaigns. There's the European African campaign, the European campaign, and the Pacific campaign. But we don't call it by that. We call it World War III, although there was no singular day or quick time period called World War II, excuse me. World War II was many sub-events. In this case, it's even more succinct that there are four sub-events, the four horsemen. So as we read down through the next verses, I've come to understand that these are the effects of the horsemen. And I've explained that before, but we'll go and read it. Okay, and it said, and another angel, verse 3, came and stood at the altar holding a golden censer, and the incense was given to him that he might add it to the prayers of all the saints upon the golden altar, which was before the throne. So this is obviously strictly in heaven. This is the hyper dimension, the eternal dimension, not on earth yet. And the smoke of the incense with the prayers of the saints went up before God out of the angel's hands. So he's painting a scene here of what he actually saw. And the angel took the censer and he filled it with the fire of the altar and threw it to the earth, and there followed peals of thunder, sounds, flashes, lightnings, and an earthquake. And we go on here and we're going to read trumpets 1 and 2. And the seven angels who had the seven trumpets prepared themselves to sound. And the first sounded, and there came hail, fire mixed with blood, and they were thrown to the earth. And these first four trumpets are often called the third judgments because every one of them applies or pertains to a third of something. And they're all geographical, right? In the land are springs of water, there are trees, there's the atmosphere above the land, right? The sky or the air and everything above the land. And then there's the seas surrounding the land, which would be the salt water. And so if it was the United States, then the United States, it would be all of the United States involved. It would be all of the rivers and lakes, the Great Lakes, the Mississippi, all the fresh waters, all the forests and trees. And it also would involve the surrounding, seas and saltwater bodies. So continue on. The second angel sounded, and something like a great mountain burning with fire was thrown into the sea. And a third of the sea became blood, like I was just saying. I don't know if you've ever listened to Tom Horn. He's passed on now, but he had some interesting writings and television presentations. And he believed that the Apophis, I have a link here to the Sid Roth show where he appeared, is actually what is referred to here. So I'm not saying that's inaccurate. He apparently had a vision. That's one possibility. Personally, I believe that this is referring to nuclear missiles. So it says here that a third of the creatures which were in the sea had life, died, and a third of the ships were destroyed. And I mentioned last time, but I'll reiterate it, that I don't believe God is doing a selective picking of various entities to destroy. In other words, he's not going, okay, I see a poplar tree, I'm going to save you. Pine tree, smite, walnut tree, keep. It's not, it doesn't make any sense. The only thing that makes sense out of this is that these are large land masses. And like I said last time, if you look, and I've calculated it, you can do your own with AI or whatever. If you look at the land masses and our allies of the United States and the land masses and the allies of Russia, and those, I believe, are the two big players in Ezekiel 38, you'll see that they encompass exactly what this is saying. It's 1/3 of the earth mass is the United States and Russia and our allies. So I believe that's it, but it makes logical sense of what I'm saying is accurate because there's one superpower and one vying old superpower. A likely conflict now if it wasn't with China, and China's in chapter 16, Kings of the East, so it's not involving China. That means that it has to be Russia and the United States. And I went into depth at one point talking about how Ezekiel 39:6, God's going to rain fire on those who dwell carelessly in the coastlands. In the United States at the time that this was written, and even up until 1492, it was considered to be coastlands way out there. Nobody knew what they were, and they considered them to be islands way out to the west. And that's where I get that from. But at any rate, so it's not a fun thing to think of, but I believe that that's what's going to happen based upon overall scripture, not just one taken out of context. But I can't go into that all fully right now. I've done that in the past. So what we're going to do is see that there are more trumpets. There's four trumpets, and all of these are the effects of the four horsemen. They're a mega event. They're one event with sub-events, okay, if you will, or sub-descriptions, better. And the great star fell from heaven, burning like a torch, and it fell on a third of the rivers, on the springs of waters. Okay. Well, last night we went out last night to look at the Falcon 9 launch. We didn't see it go up, but a couple nights earlier I did. And I always tell everybody it looks like a upside down candle going because we're so far away we can see it in the sky. We watch them all the time. But this I think sounds just like it. So it says burning like a torch. Well, a torch, candle, whatever, you know. So in the olden days, you've seen the old Roman movies, right? They would light their pitch on fire and they'd have a torch, right? In fact, British call their electric batteried flashlights now. What do they call them? Torches. Okay. We watch a lot of British TV. Bring that torch over here, guy putting his flashlight on something. So at any rate, what I'm saying is when they're going up, the tail is down toward the earth, right? It's an upside down candle. But if a missile was coming in and you were alive, let's hope not, because we should be all gone, and you would see it look more like a torch or candle because it would be coming in and the flame would be going that way. And it wouldn't be an upside down candle, it would be a candle. So I believe this is talking about nuclear tipped missiles coming in. And it said the name of the star was called Wormwood, verse 11. A third of the waters became wormwood. Again, he's not going, okay, smite the Mississippi, save Lake Huron. He's not picking and choosing smite, save, save, smite, smite, save, smite, smite. God, that's nonsensical. God, that's not a reasonable or logical interpretation. What I'm saying makes logical sense. And so what's going to happen is that if it is this case, and think about it, it said that this star is called Wormwood. And so star referring to one of these that he's seen. And a third of the waters became wormwood, and men died of the waters because they were made bitter. Okay, wormwood is an herb. I don't know if it's herb, it's a wood that is extremely bitter. And if it falls into waters, like it happened when the Israelites were crossing the desert, it rendered the water undrinkable because it was bitter. In other words, it poisoned the water. Okay. You can find that in Exodus. So what we see is that whatever this thing is, a star made the waters undrinkable and bitter. Back then when they were writing this, and until 1945, we should say, nobody could say that this might be nuclear. But that's the case. In other words, if there was a nuclear fallout on the waters, you could not drink the waters because they had been ruined. They had been destroyed. They had been made undrinkable by the radiation. So that's what I believe this is. It all fits together when you see all these and think about it. The fourth angel sounded, a third of the sun, third of the moon, third of the stars were smitten. Okay. So that a third of them might be dark in the day, might not shine as a third of it in the night in the same way. Okay. So I don't believe that nuclear winter is going to happen in a global sense. But I think you've all heard somebody propagate nuclear winter theories. So, okay, what's nuclear winter mean? Well, it means when you look up after a nuclear attack, there's so much debris in the sky that it blocks out the sun, so that over that third of the land earthly mass, let's say Russia, United States, when people look up after the attack, they're not going to be able to see any stars or the sun or anything else. They're going to be blocked out. But doesn't mean the whole southern hemisphere will not be affected as much. So it's only where this occurs. The whole Earth will be affected somewhat, but I believe that that's what this is referring to. It's the only logical explanation I can see. Not to take away from the supernatural, God can do whatever God wants to do, but I also believe a lot of these judgments are God standing back, even though He has a proactive sense of the angels, bringing forth these things. I believe a lot of this, the purpose of the tribulation is God backing off the population in the world in general and saying, have at it. You don't want me to be your God? You can be your own God, have your own way, and do your own thing. We'll see what happens out of that. Given that attitude, if that's true, what would men do? Men would perpetuate evil, the worst evil that you could think of, right? Nuclear war. So if that's what's happening here, and you can believe it or not, I'm proposing it. I'm saying that it makes sense. Now all this starts to fit together. At least to me it does. And I looked and I heard an eagle flying in mid-heaven saying with a loud voice, woe, woe, woe to those who dwell on the earth. Keep in mind that all through the book of Revelation, this phrase, dwell on the earth, in the Greek, you could also render it earth dwellers. Okay. So during the tribulation, you have two classes of people. You have the faithful, the people who believe in God, and then you have the earth dwellers. Actually, today you sort of have that. We have different classifications. We have Jew, Gentile, and born again ecclesia, church people. But at this point in time, you're only going to have two main classes of people, whether they're Jew or Gentile. You're going to have earth dwellers who all they know is the earth, humanist, those people who only believe in human wisdom, and we're going to have people who do become believers because of the remaining blasts of the trumpet. So the last three, remember the first four trumpets are the effect of the horsemen from chapter 6, the beginning. And then we're going to see in the middle, the fifth trumpet is going to be correlate to point B. So of the A, B, and C, A is the beginning of the tribulation, B is the midpoint, and C is the end. And we're going to see that the first four trumpets, just like the first four horsemen, appear at the very beginning of the tribulation, as they are in the book. They appear first. I'm not making it up. That's the order they appear in. And the fifth trumpet we're going to see is correlated to point B when the Antichrist comes on the scene. But the last three trumpets, right? Let me get it right. Can we get it right? Okay, 4 and 3. So the four are the trumpet judgments of the third judgments, and the last four are also known as woes. So don't get mixed. There are no separate woes somewhere. These are the references to the last three because they're the most severe. You would think, well, World War III is severe, but actually from a spiritual perspective, the last three, which is from the midpoint to the end of the tribulation, are the most severe spiritually impacting people. So what we see is that in this timeline, this is what I'm talking about. The rapture is going to occur in the beginning. As we saw chapter 4:1, John is taken to heaven and a door is open and he is taken there as a type, as a representative of what's going to happen. So we had in chapters 2 and 3, the seven churches, which were real churches, historical, but they're also, I believe, church age subdivisions. And then as soon as the seventh church is over, Laodicea, then immediately John is taken to heaven as a type of the rapture. And the amount of time passing in chapter 4 and 5 is no time. Because it's eternal. There is no time in heaven, really. I know we just read there's a half an hour of silence, but how that works, I don't know, because we're talking about a quantum multidimensional reality, which is something we can't wrap our heads around. We can theorize it. Our little brains can kind of conceptualize it, but we have no idea what eternity is. I know there are people who have had a, you know, the humanists would say out of the body experience, but where they went to heaven and they have an inkling of it and try to bring it back. But everyone that I know, including a friend of mine who that happened to, said, well, there's no way, there's no words I can really describe what happened to me. In other words, it's so far beyond anything that I understand or can communicate in English, Spanish, or any other language. So, you know, people that have been there, remember what Paul said. I knew a man that he was taken to the third heaven, and you know, and he saw things he couldn't really relate to us, unspeakable things. And he wished he had stayed there. He said, I was caught betwixt the two, between the two, whether to stay in heaven or come back, but God let me come back for the benefit of my disciples. So that's the ultimate example. It's not just somebody's experience, it's in the word. But what I'm saying is that looking at this overall flow in context to what we're just reading, the rapture occurs, and I'll be glad to elucidate Ezekiel 38 and 39 if anybody wants to hear about it. But in there, it says that they're going to burn the weapons of the Russians for 7 years. So there's only one 7-year event in Scripture, and that's the tribulation. I beseech you to try to find another one anywhere in the prophetic. You will not. There are none. So if the Ezekiel talks about burning the weapons after a terrible war with Russia and those in the coastlands, then where does that have to fall? Is it in the beginning, the middle, or the end? Well, if they're burning the weapons, destroying them, we'll say, destroying the weapons for 7 years, then that war has to be at the very beginning. It is co-tangent with the contemporaneously situated with World War III. So that's why everything I'm teaching makes sense in the whole scripture, not something out of context. And I can prove all of it by going back and showing you as I have. The problem is I can't just do it in one session because there's so much that it takes me quite a while to cover it all. So at any rate, so if this is accurate, then the rapture is pre-trib rapture. I call it initial rapture. My brother-in-law, he teaches, and he doesn't believe, he believes there's some amount of time between the rapture and the first horse of the tribulation. I don't. I know Paul says that. I think it's Paul. He said, know your enemy. Don't be ignorant of his devices." Well, I can tell you right now, if the church was taken out, the devil's not going to stand back and go, "Well, let's give him some time to recoup, boys. You know, let's see let's let him get it together here, and you know, let's see kind of what pans out here, and then I'll step in and take over." Nah. There's no time. From the time the rapture occurs, there are no Christians in the earth. The devil, he's not an idiot. He's got demons everywhere and fallen angels giving him the info, right? He's got spies everywhere. They're going to say, they're gone. He's going to go get them, boys. They're gone. Go get them. I mean, the tribulation will start immediately. So I call it the initial rapture. Is it a type of pre-trib? Yes, but the initial rapture, I think, is more accurate. So only because there are different views of how long it's going to be between them. But I think there is no time between them. So the rapture occurs, as in the book of Revelation. In Revelation 4:1, John is taken to heaven, and then there's no time because chapter 4 and 5 is a parenthetical shot of heaven showing a eternal vision of what's going on up there, but no time is passing. It's zero time. So in other words, you could just take that out of there. So from verse 4:1 to 6:1, when the white horse goes forth, is immediate. You see what I'm saying? In other words, chapter 4 and 5 are not in time, so you can't put them on the timeline. So the rapture occurs, and immediately World War III occurs, as I explained, because Ezekiel 39:6 says that they're going to burn the weapons for 7 years. So that gives you your point. That's how I interpret things. Everything in the scripture, in Revelation, is either point A, B, or C, unless it's historical, which would be before we get to chapter 6, or it's millennium and beyond. That's chapter 19, 20 and beyond. So, but everything from chapter 6 through 19 is all in the timeline. And the timeline by Daniel 9:27 is clearly defined as the beginning, the middle, and the end. Yes. Right. Well, first of all, the bearing of the weapons will be carried out by the world government, not by the Jews. Okay, the world, at that point, there's going to be the one world government. The whole 7 years will be a one world government. as I've taught before. And so that's why the white horse comes on the scene. Antichrist will come on the scene, and he will be recognized as the Messiah. Jesus said, I come in my own name. You don't recognize me. You don't receive me. But if another comes in his own name, you will receive him. That's the white horse. They will receive him. He's going to be received, and that's the topic of Revelation 13 we're getting to in the future here. They will receive him as Messiah. He's going to set up a 7-year peace treaty, which no one's ever done. So that's going to be part of why the Jews look at him as Messiah. The other part is he's going to allow them to build the temple, rebuild the temple. So the Jews believe that he is the Messiah until the middle portion, which also Jesus in Matthew 24:15 alludes to, referring back to Daniel 9:27. He says that, there will be the abomination of desolation. Abomination of desolation is a term which fits right into B. Chapter 12 of Revelation is when Satan is thrown down. At that point, Satan is going to indwell the Antichrist personage, and he's going to be Satan worshipped on earth. And at that point is when they flee. The Jews are under delusion up to that point that this guy is Messiah. Of course, he's false Messiah, we know. But so once they see he proclaims himself God, well, Jews who in any way realize their scripture, hear Israel, our God is one, the Shema. Okay, so there can't be two gods. You can't have God, and this guy's God. So as soon as he says, I am God, they flee. That's how they flee and why they flee. But not all of them. There's just going to be a few hand-picked remnant. God always has his remnant. Remember Elijah, he said, I'm the only one, God. How come all this is happening to me? And the Lord said, I have 7,000 have not bent their knee. So he always has a remnant. These are the remnant of the Jews. There'll be some non-Jews too, but these Jews will flee maybe to Petra somewhere else. So, but that's the answer to your question. So in the middle, we have point B, and we're about to get to the trumpet that it correlates with point B. Point C we'll get to later. Point C is Armageddon. It's the final point. In the Greek, parousia, it means like peruse, to see. Every eye shall see him. And so unlike the rapture, which is totally instantaneous and invisible in the very beginning, at the very end is going to be the parousia, where every eye shall see him like a lightning from the east to the west. And so as we go on here, and to clarify that, just so that we're clear, because many people, even that I respect as Bible scholars, somehow miss this. I don't know how they miss it, but they conflate World War III with Armageddon as if they're the same thing. They are no way the same thing, and I prove it here in just one page. In Ezekiel 38, which is World War III, we have Russia, and Gog, which is the land of Russia up in that area, and 5 Muslim national ethnic groups come down. The 5 nations are all the nations that are currently either totally Muslim or heavily Muslim. So we'll call them Muslim ethnic groups. So there's only Russia and the 5 nations. And also, I believe, although it's the inference is from Ezekiel 39, where it says that I'll rain fire on the coastlands, it's the United States. So, but how about Armageddon? Armageddon is totally different. Armageddon is all the armies of the entire world. Armageddon is in no way World War III, or you can call it Ezekiel 38, however you want to enumerate it. But the thing is that they're not the same. Further proving that, Magog is defeated. Magog is the land of Gog, the people of Gog, which is traditionally Russia, based on the Table of Nations in Genesis 10. Armageddon, defeat of Magog was not mentioned. Okay, so in Ezekiel 38, which is the very beginning of the tribulation, Magog is defeated. Russia and all their allies are defeated. In Armageddon, that's not even mentioned because it's not the same. Ezekiel 38, Russian army retreats to Siberia. Okay, that's Ezekiel 39, 38, 39. So what happens there? The 1/6 of the Russian army's left and they go up to Siberia, the most northern part. Armageddon, no one retreats because they're all killed. There's nobody to retreat. They're all dead. Okay, so how can you mix that up? I don't know. Now then we have Ezekiel 38, Euphrates River is not even mentioned. But at the end, when we see the Revelation 16, and it talks about Armageddon there clearly, then we have a problem because Ezekiel 38, the Euphrates is not mentioned, but in Armageddon, the Euphrates is dried up and is a major factor of how the attack is accomplished by China. Ezekiel 38, no mentions of the kings of the East. Kings of the East, which I believe is a confederation of China and all of the Asian states, countries, like even India, all of Asia will be coming to attack Jerusalem. And so that is not even mentioned in Ezekiel 38, which is a major, major factor of Armageddon. So how can it be not mentioned and avoided or left out in 38, but in Armageddon, major player, Revelation 16, Kings of the East. So, and then we go to another one, no visible return of Christ. Israel burns weapons for 7 years. Well, the big thing about Armageddon is the parousia, which is the visible whole world view of Christ returning. World War III, Ezekiel, Christ doesn't return, okay? But he does return in glory, chapter 19 of Revelation at the Battle of Armageddon. It clearly indicates it's Har-Megiddo, the valley of Megiddo, we say Armageddon. And then Antichrist is not mentioned, okay. The Antichrist is not mentioned in 38, 39 at all, but for Armageddon, he's the focus. He's the whole reason for Armageddon. He's held up in Jerusalem, and they're all coming to kill him and take him over and take over his kingdom. China wants to rule the world. I was just listening to some of our State Department people yesterday, and they were talking about the Chinese threat to us now. And they were saying that China definitely has a plan of world hegemony, hegemony, however you want to pronounce it. Their goal is to take over the world. Okay, it's not like, oh, they might. No, they openly state this is our goal. They're communists. Communist goal is 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Plan your work your plan. They have 5-year plans, 10-year plans, 20-year plans. They've engaged in the greatest military buildup since Nazi Germany, greater than Nazi Germany. They now have more ships than the United States of America. But they're also, Asians are very careful. They're very cautious. They'll sit back and they'll watch all the players and they'll wait to the right moment before they jump in. So for some reason, they don't jump in until Revelation 16 at point C, the very end. So it appears that during the 7 years, they're watching the Antichrist and they're watching everything that's going on. At a certain point, when they have overwhelming military power and it suits them, they will then come to take over the Middle East, take over Jerusalem, take over Antichrist's kingdom to rule the world. So it's not some crazy Bible teacher projecting this. You can go and turn on any news network and listen to what I'm talking about. It's current news right now, especially with the tariff talks. So at any rate, what I could say is that the judgments that are parallel, like I said, I believe the seals and trumpets are parallel. It fits nicely because the 5th trumpet, which is the first woe, correlates nicely with the altar of souls. So what's going to happen when the midpoint of the tribulation occurs? Satan comes down and indwells Antichrist, and he then proclaims himself God. Is that at that very point he will demand that everyone worship him, take the mark, or die. So where did this altar of souls and seal number 5, and how does it correlate with trumpet number 5? Well, it's like I'm saying, at the midpoint, Satan is cast to earth. That's in Revelation 9 and 12. You see that Satan is cast to the earth. And this is a good point, by the way. He's never been here. People say the devil made me do it. I take it back. He definitely was here during Christ's ministry, right? Because he influenced Peter. Remember, Jesus said, "Get behind me, Satan," and he entered into Judas. But other than that, he's not in the earth. His dwelling place is not limited to the earth. He's going, like in Job, he's going before the throne accusing people right now. He's not limited. He's not restricted. But at this point, the whole meaning of he's cast to the earth means that he is only in this realm. And this realm is the first heaven, the atmosphere and the earth itself. Second heaven is the cosmos. Third heaven is where God dwells. So at any rate, what we have here is that it correlates nicely because although there's going to be martyrdoms during the first 3.5 years, it's only when Satan comes to earth, says, I am God, worship me, that people refuse and they're martyred. And there'll be millions upon millions upon millions of people martyred. And that's called the altar of souls. Let's see. In Jesus in Matthew 24 mentions that. It's called the abomination of desolation. So Jesus correlates and affirms what Daniel saw in Daniel 9:27. Then he shall confirm a covenant with many for 1 week, but in the middle of the week, point B, he shall bring an end to the sacrifice and offering, and on the wing of abomination shall be one who makes desolate even until the consummation. Consummation means the fulfillment of the prophecies, which is determined, is poured out on the desolate. So at any rate, so there was an actual occurrence like this about 200 years before Jesus, where the Greek Seleucid ruler Antiochus Epiphanes slew a pig on the altar, and that was referred to at the time of Jesus as the abomination of desolation. So when Jesus uses that term, they all knew what he's talking about. The fifth seal is the martyred souls.